Hello and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to another potluck wrap up. This is where I put all of the books that I have read into this teapot. I pull them out at random, so I have no idea what I'm going to be wrapping up month by month. You can hear it. I am unwell. I don't want any sympathy because I did this to myself. I went out at night time with people in social places in the rain and I got a cold. I only have myself to blame. No sympathy whatsoever, please. But I did have quite a good reading month in September. I started and finished the series. I picked up a couple of Greek myth retellings and I had a nice time. Didn't read much from my TBR, but I ticked off quite a few. So yeah, it was a good month. I'm hoping that October is even better because it's spooky season and obviously October in general. It's my time. It's my time to shine. But yeah, let's just get into it. Okay, I rushed it last month and I regretted it. So, it's just so good. Such good sound. Right. Yeah, so I had a pretty good reading month and I'm really pleased. And I'm hoping to fill this today, as per usual, with books that I'm happy to recommend. I'm going to aim for around 20 minutes, but I'm also going to give myself wiggle room. One, because I am going to get out of breath very quickly trying to do this because I'm not well. And also for coughing and sneezing and other such things. But the first one that I've got to wrap up is Bookshops and Bone Dust, which is by Travis Baldree. This is the prequel to Legends and Lattes, and I was very, very lucky that I got an opportunity to read this via NetGalley. I really enjoyed this. It had everything that we needed from the series as itself. Very, very, very similar to the original, or the first one. I find it really hard when you have the main story and then a random prequel. Like, it's not like there's like a series and then this is a prequel. It's just like we have book 1 and then book 0.5. But in this, our protagonist has injured herself and she is kind of helping a bookshop get back on its feet. And we have the same sort of stuff, same sort of drama we had in the first one of other businesses trying to encroach, a big bad, some fight scenes, some drama and some gentle romance. You've got dwarfs, you've got Ratkin, and obviously she's an orc as well. I can't remember her name off the top of my head and I'm really annoyed, but we'll blame it on the cold brain. But I really enjoyed it and I think I gave it 4 stars because it is so very similar to the first one. I think anyone who really enjoyed that first one is going to really enjoy this one as well. And I have not stopped thinking about Legends and Lattes since I made the comparison that it's basically just the storyline of Chocolat. I am going to do that Women in Business video. I'm just not going to do it anytime soon because I've got too many other things I want to do. But I am going to do that. So there were a couple of people that recommended other books that were like Women in Business before. Feel free to drop some more down below and make sure you pre-order Bookshops and Bone Dust because it's good. It's a good time. Okay, that's one. Not a great start that there's nothing to put up here, but we shall soldier on. The next one I'm going to wrap up for you is Bloody Rose. Okay, so this is the sequel to Kings of the Wild. Now, Kings of the Wild I gave 5 stars. It has D&D vibes, high fantasy. It's a bunch of old guys who were heroes, were kind of champions of their era, I guess. Fighting monsters, etc. But the world they live in now, it's a bit more organised than that. There's a lot less chaos. But when one of them, when this lady basically goes missing, they band back together to save her. Now, this is obviously a few years after that, and she is still dealing with the fact that she was saved, even though she is a soldier in her own right. But this was just a lot more somber. Like, the vibe of this was a lot more sedate. There was still the kind of D&D vibes. She's also not the main character. The main character is a young girl called Tam, who is just very excited to escape, her boring life, basically. And she basically becomes the bard of Bloody Rose and her crew. And what I really liked about this is when you play D&D, sometimes people will assume that a bard is just there to kind of like fill in the gaps, either heal or do magic stuff or just to seduce everybody. What I like about this one is I feel like Nicholas Eames must be a D&D player because he subverts a lot of those stereotypes, and she is far more of a warrior than that. And for those reasons I did enjoy it, but I didn't love this. I didn't love this the way I loved the first one. And I know some people have had real issues before where they're reading a series and the first book follows one group of characters and then the second book follows a separate group of characters. That doesn't usually bother me because usually the writing style and the world holds me to it. But the writing style of this one felt so much more sedate and felt so much more somber. And whilst there were still these big dramatic fight scenes, it was a lot slower and a lot more more classic high fantasy rather than the fast-paced D&D style I was expecting. Now, I know that some people really, really struggled with that fast-paced like D&D style, and therefore you might actually enjoy Bloody Rose more. I didn't love it. I'm going to give the third book, whenever that comes out, a go, but if it's more like this, I'm going to unhaul Bloody Rose and book 3 and just keep Kings of the Wilds, because I think you could quite easily read that as a standalone. Like, that's fine as a standalone. But yeah, so like this one was fine, but it got like a 3.5. I wasn't massively enamored with it, unfortunately. It is still available on Wayward. I would still recommend it. I just didn't love it as much as I loved the first one. Oh, I've pulled 2 by accident, so we'll do both of them. I just smacked my elbow. Oh, this is not a good week for me. This is not a good week for me. Okay, the first one is Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. I actually really enjoyed this. This is my second ever Ali Hazelwood. I also have Love Theoretically, and I have the collection of short stories as well. And I know there's a chess one coming out soon. This follows a neuroscientist working with NASA, who is trying to help NASA create these suits that will basically protect their brains whilst in space, etc. And should be able to stop them. But essentially, I'm really dumbing down the science here, guys. Basically, if you hit a certain point in G-force, you are thrown into unconsciousness because your brain can't cope. This should, in theory, protect you from having that almost seizure-like response. But what I really, really liked about this is, I have said before that I think it's really important that a sequel take something that is world relevant and then increase the risk and increase the stakes. The world should be bigger. Otherwise, what's the point of having a sequel? And I obviously didn't get that with Bookshops and Bone Dust, and that was fine. I did get it with this, and that was great. What I really, really liked about this is the stakes in their lives are a lot more poignant than just I need to progress in my career, and more like this is life-saving work, millions expenditure, and there is actual violence in this, which I really, really liked. I like the fact those stakes are raised. I'm hoping, obviously, that in Love Theoretically, the stakes get raised. Again, we shall see. But I really, really liked that. I really liked the dynamic of these two characters. I thought their kind of enemies to lovers story was very sweet. And really interesting, because she just spends the entire time being like, ugh, and he hates me, and he thinks I'm ugly, and like he hates me, and he's just like the whole time like, you're married. Like that's how he views it. So it's like a really interesting thing, really cute, wholesome romance. I hope that's not too much of a spoiler, because it is a romance, so you would assume they get together. But anyway, that's the whole thing. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. I don't know if thing is, I read Love Hypothesis and that got 5 stars. I think this got 4. It might have got 4.5. There was nothing I could fault with it, but I think there was just something about Love Hypothesis that I just adored. But I did really appreciate the writing style, up to the stakes, the world continued, the characters still had that same level of banter. I really liked that. And I also really liked the sapphic subplot of one of the other characters. I thought that was really cute as well. So really enjoyed this, would recommend. I feel like that's been in there for ages. Yeah, May. I read that back in May. I was thinking, like, why have I not read Love Theoretically yet? And it's because I really struggled reading in general from like May to now, and this is more of a summer read. Romance is always like a summery thing for me. That's why I haven't got to it soon. And I was thinking, like, why have I really enjoyed this. I remember really enjoying this. Why haven't I read that yet? That's why. That's why. So the other one is Iron Gold, which I'm going to wrap up Iron Gold, but because I finished in September Dark Age, I am also going to wrap up Dark Age. Can we just, with the absolute size of those? Unnecessary. Now, I wanted to crack on with this series again pretty recently. So July is when I finished Iron Gold. Oh, yeah, July is when I finished Iron Gold. September is when I finished Dark Age, although I'm pretty sure I started this in August. I really, really enjoyed both of these. Again, the world continues. If you've read the Red Rising As It Was trilogy, it can feel very kind of like resolved at that point. So I like the fact that at this one, it's 10 years later, and some things have gone wrong. The world, the utopia they've created is not as utopic? We'll go with it. It's not as utopic as they'd like. And then the stakes get raised. What I do think is really interesting style-wise and like writing-wise is the fact that In the first 3 books, we only really have Darrow's perspective. But in this one, they actually split up into several different perspectives. And that's really important because at this point, the worlds are really divided and these people are all in different places, and you do need to know what's going on. It creates a lot of dramatic irony because you know more than the characters do, and I loved that. There were so many instances where I cried because it's just so powerful and so sad and beautiful. And much like with Game of Thrones, don't like any characters, don't fall in love with any characters, don't trust that any characters are going to survive, because they won't. Fucking brutal, really fucking brutal, and I loved them. And I am so scared to do Lightbringer. I've got it as an audiobook because for some reason my ARC never arrived, which is weird because I was promised an ARC for Lightbringer, but that's fine. I have got the audiobook, and then I'm going to wait for the paperback to come out so that they all kind of match. I did consider getting the hardback as well, but I don't have the hardbacks of any of the others, so I'm just going to wait for the paperbacks and just have it as a paperback series. But I adored it. I absolutely adored it. This is probably one of my favourite series of all time. This series is a series that I could read 1,000 times. Like, I don't really have comfort series or like comfort read series that I start over and over again, except for maybe Skullduggery Pleasant. This could become that. And I feel like that's a really high bar to set. And that's why I'm so terrified to read the last or most recent book. I think there's one more to come after Lightbringer. And I'm just not ready. I'm not emotionally ready. But these, oh, they were so good. They were so good. It was so sad. I will say at one point during Dark Age, something awful happens. Like, there are trigger warnings, okay? There's all, oh my god, it's awful. So do please check those out if you need them. But there was a point where I was listening to this as an audiobook, because one of the things was I was doing this for Magical Readathon where I had to read it in different places. So I did it as an audiobook so that I could read it whilst I was driving to and from Folkestone, etc. And like when I was travelling and doing other things. So I got through it quite quickly, but I was doing it as an audiobook. But I was also doing it whilst working. And there was one bit, fucking brutal. And I just had to like pause, take my headphones off, and I like turned around and my flatmate Zach was playing games and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, I am not okay, and just proceeded to like stare into the abyss for a little bit. Not okay. Great book though. So yeah, I'm really glad I got to wrap up both of those because they absolutely deserve the hype. And after I'm done with Lightbringer, that will be another series that I am totally caught up on. So yay me on that. Oh god, it's so good and so sad. I've just spotted that this one is from January. Whatever this is, I read this nearly a year ago. So, Blood Trials. Okay, I was like, please don't be something that I can't remember the general plot of. Thankfully, I have recommended this to so many people since then that I feel quite confident in talking about this one. So, Blood Trials is a BIPOC sci-fi in the same way that this is kind of like a sci-fi where it feels like a fantasy, but it's set with modern tech, etc. And basically, she has a blood magic she should not have. It is illegal. Because of her heritage, she has it. And it's something that her grandfather has trained her to use and has used to protect her. Her grandfather even, is a military general. He's quite high up and very, very prestigious. And she basically has been training her entire life to follow in his footsteps so that she can protect herself as well. But because that's kind of what they want. She doesn't really have a relationship with her mother. I think her mother is dead at this point, but she never really knew anything about her, and her grandfather wouldn't talk about her mother. But she assumes that it is her father is where she got her magic from. That's all really important going in because her grandfather is murdered and she basically has to go through these blood trials and basically go through this really rigorous, based on Roman mythology, training to essentially be like an ultimate warrior gladiator type. Again, very similar to Red Rising. It's really fun. She is very angry. She's a very angry character. And you know me, fucking love an angry character. She very quickly starts trying to work out who it is that could have done it, who's involved. And it is really one of those ones where you can't trust anybody. I really, really like this. This is part of a duology. There is a part 2, which is called The Blood Gift. I'm really, really excited to get to. Again, this is a 4, maybe even a 5-star read. I really, really enjoyed it. I really liked it for the epic drama, the banter between friends. This has like Hunger Games elements where certain trials aren't necessarily prescribed. They're just kind of like, they just happen. and they're not ready for them, but they've got to obviously learn to be better prepared for them, etc. I really, really liked that element of it, and I thought that just the book itself is really great. Yeah, Annie Davenport I think is a debut author. Absolutely go check out this book. And then the second one I will be getting to very soon. I might make it to that end, not because I'm wrapping up loads of books, but just because they're so chunky that I get to the end quicker. Okay, this one is from July, Before and Laughter by Jimmy Carr. Now, not one that you might expect from me if you are new to my content, but you may remember ages ago I did a video where I talked about comedians' books that I really enjoyed, and I talked about some comedic memoirs and funny books that I really, really enjoyed. If I were to do that video again, this would be on the list. Now, I know that Jimmy Carr is a very controversial comedian. I know that a lot of his jokes are viewed through a lens of you shouldn't be joking about those things. I don't necessarily prescribe to the idea that you don't make jokes about something, but more aligned with his idea of you can make jokes so long as those jokes are funny. And I've always found Jimmy Carr very, very amusing. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to enjoy his comedy or that you have to think he's a good person, but what I really liked about this is it really showed me just how much graft he has put in. This is not someone who stepped up and went, yeah, I'm a great comedian, I'm naturally very funny and I'm going to make millions. This is someone who worked really hard at what he does. I didn't know, for example, that he has dyslexia and that made it really difficult for him at school, but was something that he was able to overcome by making jokes and by studying in a slightly different way. That his mother passing away was a driving force to him changing certain facets of his life, and him having a daughter, again, sent him on a pivot that was fueled by anxiety, that he suffered from depression and had all these other things going on. There were quite a few times when I felt personally attacked by some of the comments in this when he talks about mental health. And I guess I expected this to be more of like a memoir, and it's not. It's more of like a self-help business book, which I was really surprised at, but it really just kind of champions the idea that so long as you can work and you can create these things for yourself, you can achieve those things. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to land in your lap, but you are far more likely to get what you want if you work for it, whilst being very aware that he is an industry which covets certain things that he has, such as male privilege, such as being white, etc. So I thought it was really, really interesting. I thought it was a really, really fun read, but also very poignant. This is a signed edition, so I will not be giving this up anytime soon, but I was really pleasantly surprised at how much I liked this one. I was really surprised how much I liked this one, and it was not what I expected at all. Sorry, I don't know what, I've got like dirt on it. I don't know what I was expecting, really. I think I was expecting it to be more of like a funny memoir and like about his life, similar to the ones that I've read by James A. Caster and Eliza Schlesinger. But this was really good. It was just very, very different, and obviously very, very different to other things that I read. I don't read nonfiction very often. I certainly don't read celebrity memoirs very often, but I thought this one actually ticked so many great boxes. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. Okay, I'm going to do one more just because I know I've got the space up here, and again, I said I was going to give myself some wiggle room because of the inability to breathe. Okay, one more. It's not going to be the one that I wanted to wrap up, but that's fine. Notting Hill Carnival by Candice Carty-Williams. This is a West Side Story retelling, or Romeo and Juliet retelling, depending on how you want to view it, about two young people of colour living in London who get caught up in a Notting Hill Carnival riot. It's really, really interesting to me because this is obviously one of the short, quick reads by the reading agency. Candice Carty-Williams obviously wrote Queenie. I found that a really poignant and enjoyable read. This one I found very, very similar in writing style to Pride by Ibi Zoboi. Really, really like that. And again, obviously that's a Pride and Prejudice retelling. But I like that with both of these, they are... Actually, I've got it right here because apparently I have not wrapped it up yet. What I like about both of these, other than the fact they colour coordinate beautifully, amazing, didn't even notice that before, is they take a classic and put it through the lens of a modern BIPOC own voices authorship, which I really, really like because I think it adds something to the narrative that is poignant and contemporary whilst still honouring the traditionalism of the story. Like the story of like the Romeo and Juliet elements does not change. They are still from two sides. There are two very much warring faculties. faculties, facets, focus groups, that are like don't get on and don't like each other, but it's whether their love can conquer all or whether something darker happens. And obviously if you know the story of Romeo and Juliet or West Side Story, you know that might not always be the case. I really, really like this one. It was very much a quick read. I would highly recommend it if you can grab it. I can't get this in anymore, but I know that it was available in Waterstones for a really long time. Yeah, go and check this out. And if you can find anything else like this, where it's a BIPOC retelling, but a short read, I'd really like to know, because I feel like I'd like to have that as like a little collection of quick reads that I can recommend to people who want to try those classics, but through a more modern LGBT or BIPOC lens. So there we go. I'm just going to leave that there. Those are some of the books that I have read this year. I can't believe I finally wrapped up one from January. That's insanity. Let me know in the comments down below, were there any books in September that you read that you absolutely adored and would recommend to me? Are there any of these books that you're more likely to pick up now that you've heard what my thoughts on them are? Treat yourself to something from Waypoint, because it supports me and my content. And most importantly, have a nice day.